Adapted from archaic translation by H.T. Francis and R.A. Neil. Jataka number 324. Cammasāṭaka Jataka. The kindly beast, etc. This story was told by the master while living at Jetavana monastery, about a monk who wore a leather jerkin. Both his upper and undergarment, it is said, were of leather. One day, swiftly moving out of the monastery, he went his rounds in Swerves city for alms, till he came to the fighting ground of the rams. A ram on seeing him went back, desiring to butt him. The monk thought, he is doing this, as an act of respect for me, and himself did not pull back. The ram came on with a rush and striking him on the thigh felled him to the ground. This case of imaginary salutation was blazed abroad in the congregation of the brethren. The matter was discussed by them in the hall of truth, as to how the leather-coated monk fancied he was being saluted and met with his death. The master came and inquired the subject of their discussion, and on being told what it was, said, "Not now only, brethren, but of old too this ascetic imagined he was being saluted and so came by his death," and he then told to them an old world legend. Once upon a time the Bodhisattva was born in a merchant family and worked on his trade. At that time a certain religious monk, clad in a leather garment, in going his rounds for alms, came to the ram's fighting ground, and on seeing a ram falling back before him, he fancied it did this as a mark of respect, and did not himself retire. In the whole world, he thought, this ram alone recognizes my merits, and raising his joined hands in respectful salutation he stood and repeated the first stanza. The kindly beast makes an act of homage before the high caste Brahmin versed in holy tradition. Good honest creature you, famous above all other beasts, I vow. At this moment a wise merchant sitting in his stores, to restrain the monk, uttered the second stanza. Brahmin, be not so rash this beast to trust, else will he haste to lay you in the dust, for this the ram falls back, to gain an impetus for his attack. While this wise merchant was still speaking, the ram came on at full speed, and striking the monk on the thigh, knocked him down. He was maddened with the pain, and as he lay groaning, the master, to explain the incident, gave utterance to the third stanza. With broken leg and bowl for alms upset, his damaged fortune he will painfully regret. Let him not weep with outstretched arms in vain, haste to the rescue, before the priest is killed. Then the monk repeated the fourth stanza. Thus all that honor to the unworthy pay, share the same fate that I have met today. Prone in the dust by budding ram laid low to foolish confidence my death I owe. Thus mourning he there and then came by his death. The master, his lesson ended, thus identified the birth. The man in the leather coat of today was the same then as now. And I myself was the wise merchant. Source. Adapted from archaic translation by H.T. Francis and R.A. Neil. Jataka number 325. Godha Jataka. One that plays, etc. This story was told by the master, while living at Jetavana monastery, with regard to a certain cheating rogue. The introductory story has been already given in full. But on this occasion they brought the brother to the master and exposed him, saying, Holy sir, this brother is a cheat. The master said, not now only, but formerly also he was a rogue. And then he told an old world story. Once upon a time when Brahmadatta was reigning in Benares, the Bodhisattva was born as a young lizard, and when he grew up and was lusty and strong, he lived in a forest. And a certain wicked ascetic built a hut of leaves, and took up his dwelling near him. The Bodhisattva, in searching about for food, saw this hut of leaves and thought to himself, this hut must certainly belong to some holy ascetic, and he went there and after saluting the holy man returned to his own place of dwelling. Now one day this false ascetic ate some tasty food prepared in the house of one of his patrons, and asked what meat it was. On hearing that it was lizard flesh, he became such a slave to his love of choice foods that he thought, I will kill this lizard that so constantly keeps coming to my hermitage and will cook him to my taste and eat him. So he took some ghee, curds, condiments, and the like, and went with his club concealed under his yellow robe and sat perfectly still at the door of his hut, waiting for the Bodhisattva to come, as quiet could be. And when the Bodhisattva saw this depraved fellow, he thought, "This wretch must have been eating the flesh of my family. I will put it to the test." So he stood towards wind of him, and getting a whip from his person, he knew that he had been eating the flesh of a lizard, and without going near him he turned back and made off. And when the ascetic saw he was not coming, he threw his club at him. The club missed his body, but just reached the tip of his tail. The ascetic said, "Be off with you, I have missed you." Said the Bodhisattva, "Yes, you have missed me, but you will not miss the 4 times states of suffering." Then he ran off and disappeared in an anthill which stood at the end of the enclosure walk, and putting out his head at some other hole, he addressed the ascetic in these 2 stanzas. One that plays the ascetic role should exhibit self-control. You did hurl your stick at me, false ascetic you must be. Matted locks and robe of skin serve to cloak some secret sin. Fool! To cleanse for outward show, leaving what is foul below. The ascetic, on hearing this, replied in a 3rd stanza. Please, lizard, move quickly back, oil and salt I do not lack. Pepper too I would suggest, may to boiled rice add a zest. The Bodhisattva, on hearing this, uttered the 4th stanza. I will hide me snug and warm midst the anthill's countless swarm. Cease of oil and salt to say, pepper I abominate. Moreover he threatened him and said, Abad. False ascetic, if you continue to dwell here, I will have you seized as a thief by the people who live in my feeding ground, and given over to destruction. So make haste and be off. Then the false ascetic fled from that place. The master, his lesson ended, identified the birth. At that time the rogue of a brother was the false ascetic, but I myself was the royal lizard. Source: adapted from archaic translation by H.T. Francis and R.A. Neil. Jataka number 326. Kakkāru Jataka. He that from stealing act, etc. This story was told by the master while he was at Jetavana monastery. About Devdutta, how that after causing a division in the order, as he was going away with his chief disciples, when the assembly broke up, a hot stream of blood gushed from his mouth. Then the brethren discussed the matter in the hall of truth, and said that Devdutta by speaking falsely had created a division, and afterwards fell sick and suffered great rain. The master came and inquired what subject the brethren were discussing as they sat in gathering. And on hearing what it was he said, Not now only, brethren, but of old too this fellow was a liar, and not now only, but of old also he suffered pain as the penalty of lying. And so saying he repeated this old world legend. Once upon a time when Brahmadatta was reigning in Benares, the Bodhisattva became a certain god in the heaven of the 33. Now at this time there was a great festival at Benares. A crowd of Nagas and Garuda birds and terrestrial deities came and watched the festival. And 4 divine beings from the heaven of the 33, wearing a wreath made of heavenly Kakkāru flowers, came to see the festival. And the city for the space of 12 leagues was filled with the fragrance of these flowers. Men moved about, wondering by whom these flowers were worn. The gods said, They are watching us, and flying up from the royal court, by an act of supernatural power they stood poised in the air. The lot gathered together, and the king with his princes came and asked from what world of the gods they had come. We come from the heaven of the 33. For what purpose are you come? To see the festival. What are these flowers? They are called the heavenly Kakkāru flowers. Sirs, they said, in the world of the gods you may have other flowers to wear. Give these to us. The gods made answer, These divine flowers are fit for those possessed of great powers. For the lowly, foolish, faithless, and sinful beings in this world of men they are not fitted. But whosoever amongst men are gifted with such and such virtues, for them they are suitable. And with these words the chief amongst these divine beings repeated the first stanza. He that from stealing act abstains, his tongue from lying word restrains, and reaching dizzy heights of fame still keeps his head, this flower may claim. On hearing this the family priest thought, I own not one of these qualities, but by telling a lie I will get these flowers to wear, and thus the people will credit me with these virtues. Then he said, I am gifted with these qualities, and he had the flowers brought to him and he put them on, and then begged of the second god, who replied in a second stanza. He that should honest wealth pursue and riches gained by fraud avoid, in pleasure too much excess would shun, this heavenly flower has duly won. Said the priest, I am gifted with these virtues, and had the flowers brought to him and put them on, and then begged of the third god, who uttered the third stanza. He that from purpose fixed never swerves and his unchanging faith preserves, choice food alone contempts to devour, may justly claim this heavenly flower. Said the priest, I am gifted with these virtues, and had the flowers brought to him and he put them on, and then begged of the fourth god, who spoke the fourth stanza. He that good men will never attack when present, nor behind their back, and all he says, fulfills indeed, this flower may claim as his due weed. The priest said, I am gifted with these virtues, and he had the flowers brought to him and put them on. So these divine beings gave the 4 wreaths of flowers to the priest and returned to the world of gods. As soon as they were gone, the priest was seized with a violent pain in the head, as if it were being pounded by a sharp spike, or crushed by an instrument of iron. Maddened with the pain he rolled up and down, and cried out with a loud voice. When men asked, What means this? He said, I claimed these virtues when I had them not, and spoke falsely and so begged these flowers of the gods. Take them from off my head. They would have removed them, but could not, for they were fastened as it were with an iron band. Then they raised him up and led him home. And as he lay there crying aloud, 7 days passed. The king spoke to his counselors and said, This wicked Brahmin will die. What are we to do? My lord, they answered, let us again celebrate a festival. The sons of the gods will come back. And the king held a festival, and the sons of the gods returned and filled all the city with the perfume of the flowers, and took their stand in the same place in the royal court. The people gathered together, and bringing that wicked Brahmin they laid him down before the gods on his belly. He prayed the gods, saying, My lords, spare my life. They said, These flowers are not suitable for a wicked and evil man. You thought in your heart to deceive us. You have received the reward of your false words. After thus rebuking him in the presence of the people, they removed the wreath of flowers from his head, and having addressed the people, they returned to their own place of dwelling. The master, having ended his lesson, identified the birth. At that time Devdutta was the Brahmin, of the divine beings Kashyapa was one, Moggallana was another, Saraputra a third, and I myself was the chief one of all.